Hey everyone, so it's been a while since I've done a video. I've been wanting to do this one for ages, and I was actually asked by a friend to do a video on this topic. So I want to talk about the San Pedro cactus as a medicine plant. I chose to sit on making this video for a while because, well, San Pedro is quite a complex medicine plant. A lot of the history around its traditional use has been lost over the years, unlike ayahuasca, which most of the, history and information about how it's used and the ceremonies, it's been passed down quite well through generations, and everyone who, works with ayahuasca and has trained with it, they all use essentially the same ceremony or the same concept with ceremony, and it doesn't really change very much. So San Pedro in itself is believed not to have come from, but for ceremonially to have come from northern Peru, within the Chavin, I hope I'm saying that right, Chavin. If anyone knows how to pronounce it properly, please pull me up on it. So in that era, there was a cave, I'm not sure if it was a painting or a carving, found of a half man, half jaguar holding San Pedro cactus. So it's commonly believed that that is a depiction of a San Pedro shaman, as the animals associated with San Pedro as the jaguar and the hummingbird. Ayahuasca has the snake associated, peyote has deer associated, so San Pedro has these two animals, the hummingbird and the jaguar. So it's believed that that painting was probably around the time that San Pedro was beginning to be used in ceremony, and people realized that it could be used as a very strong ceremonial medicine plant. So within that, nowadays it's very much viewed as a heart-opening medicine. It's taken during the day, and it is all based around expression and really opening the heart and emotions and letting things out verbally. Unlike ayahuasca, which is taken at night and a very inward journey, San Pedro most often is taken during the day and is a very expressive, verbal outward journey. So there are actually a few different ways that it's been used in ceremonial that I've heard it being used in ceremony. So it doesn't have, unlike ayahuasca, which pretty much has one guideline that you can play around with a little bit, but basically it has quite strict, this is what happens, this is how it works, this is how ceremonies run. So San Pedro has about 4 different ceremonial ways that I've heard of it being used. I've only ever sat in ceremony with one kind of ceremony. I believe I've sat in about 6 ceremonies now, but they've all been that same style that my teacher was taught by her teacher, and that's how she runs ceremony. So it's quite an interesting one in that aspect, in that it can be run the way that I've always sat in ceremony and done it, as a one-day ceremony based on 4 directions. So you say the night before you eat dinner, and then from about 8:30 p.m. you fast. And you fast all through the next day while ceremony is going until after ceremony, when you eat a light dinner and basically go to bed because you're exhausted. So the 4 directions all have different meanings and different things associated with them. So when you're sitting in a ceremonial circle and these things are brought up, everyone gets a chance to talk on these topics. Things like the father, the mother, the self, and the medicine itself. Of course, there's the elements that are also part of that: fire, water, air, earth, I've forgotten exactly what all of the directions are associated with when it comes to the San Pedro ceremony. But essentially, they have different things associated, and you all get that chance to talk on that topic and to release any negative emotions, memories, anything that's held in the body that is negative can be released. Positive things can also be spoken about and put out into the circle. It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. There's a lot of happiness. There's a lot of singing. It can be a really joyful ceremony as well as hitting some really heavy topics for people. So for me, it's a very long ceremony. You're sitting almost 12 hours in ceremony, hearing everybody's stories, whether they're positive or releasing negative or delving really deep within themselves. So it can be quite a hard ceremony. Unlike ayahuasca, which is still incredibly, incredibly hard, I would never take that away from it. It is a very tough ceremony, but it only lasts for, a max of 6 hours. Whereas San Pedro, you're sitting all day going through this. So that's the ceremony that I've done. I've also seen it done in the way that you'll sit in a ceremonial circle, the medicine will be served, and then the medicine person will take the group out for a gentle hike. This could be to sacred places, it could just be to connect with nature. Again, being sort of the heart-opening medicine, there is a lot of connection with the natural world. So I do see the use of taking people out on sort of a walk and a hike when the medicine's running through them, as it gives them an opportunity to connect with nature in a way that they may not necessarily do without it. I've also heard of it being done as a 4-day ceremony, and each day being dedicated to one of the 4 directions. So in the morning you drink, and then you go out and connect with that direction, that element, and anything else that is associated with it. And then you do the same thing for the next 3 days, just with varying directions. It's believed that in northern Peru, where the ceremonial use is believed to have come from, that they also do quite intense all-night ceremonies that aren't based around the 4 directions. In these ceremonies, the shaman will have an elaborate altar or mesa set out with all sorts of powerful tools and objects, and they will conduct healings during this time, as well as people sitting in the circle in ceremony. I'm not 100% sure the people sitting in ceremony actually drink the medicine, or if it's just the shaman. The Wachumero or the Wachumera, as when it comes to ayahuasca, it can be used in that way. The traditional use of ayahuasca was that the shaman would drink it and then go around the circle giving healings to those sitting in circle because they were in need. The people sitting in circle were there because they're ill in some way, or they're having some form of trouble in their life. And they wouldn't actually drink ayahuasca themselves. It would only be the shaman who would then go around doing healings. So I believe, from what I've read, that the all-night ceremonies were run in a similar way in northern Peru. I believe that they are still run in that way to some extent in that area. So the plant itself, I find it quite amazing, San Pedro, being a column cactus, and that it grows in Ecuador, Peru, Chile and Bolivia. It will grow anywhere from the coastlines to the desert to high up in the Andes. It is a very hardy plant and will thrive pretty much anywhere except for a tropical rainforest style climate. So I find that really fascinating about it, in that the areas that it grows, and that it is such a diverse and hardy medicine plant. I've also heard people talk and have met people who have done this ceremony. It's normally, I've only ever heard of people doing this ceremony when they essentially run ceremonies themselves or are quite highly trained when it comes to medicine plants and working especially with San Pedro, where they will link a day ceremony and a night ceremony. So, they'll start first thing in the morning, do the 4 direction style ceremony all day, have a short break where they have a chance to drink a broth and sort of a soothing tea to help sort of soothe the digestive system and give a little bit of energy and oomph back into the body, and then they will go again all night until sunrise. So that is also done by linking essentially into a 24-hour ceremony. It also involves other things like doing I forget how to pronounce the proper word, but essentially the South American version of a sweat lodge is also incorporated into that 24-hour ceremony. So San Pedro itself is seen as the male medicine, whereas ayahuasca is seen as the female medicine. Ayahuasca is often referred to as Madre Ayahuasca, Mother Ayahuasca. San Pedro is often referred to as the grandfather medicine. So it has a very masculine energy to it, which I find really interesting because it is a masculine medicine that is all based around the heart and sharing emotions and speaking emotions, which kind of goes against the sort of westernized view of what masculine is. So I quite like that it breaks down that sort of stereotype and that shows that the masculine medicine is actually really about releasing emotions. So I find that just an interesting little thing to throw in. There is a somewhat crossover between San Pedro and peyote, as they are both cactuses that contain mescaline. So the spirits are somewhat similar. Ceremonies and uses and traditions are wildly different and do not have much of a crossover, but the plants themselves do, just in the fact that they are quite similar in that sense. So I think that's quite interesting. I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier when I was talking about the animals with medicines, but peyote is associated with the deer. That's the animal that is associated with that medicine. So another topic that I wanted to quickly talk about with San Pedro is the power of the medicine. It revolves around how many ribs the cactus has. This is a chonta staff, which in northern Peru is quite often used in ceremonies. It will be, the shamans will often have many of these staves sitting behind the mesa or the altar. So if you look at mine, it depicts San Pedro. So you'll see this is the cactus here, and then it has a little star carved in to it as well. When you chop San Pedro or peyote to then be made into medicine, it leaves a star shape. So that's where the star symbol comes in. Now these staves are used to, they're often put into either sand, or I put mine into rice as it sits behind my altar. And these staves, one of their main things is that they will draw in negative energy. So as people are releasing negative emotions, memories, anything, and putting that out into the circle, these staves will absorb that, and then it will be released into the sand or the rice, which is then thrown away. So that is one of the main uses of these staves. There's many others, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So I was talking about the ribs of the cactus. Now, San Pedro goes from having 4 ribs all the way through to having 13 ribs. I believe anything from 5 ribs to 12 ribs can be used as medicine, the more ribs, the more powerful the medicine is. So cactus that have 4 ribs is not consumed as medicine, but they have similar purpose to the stuff I just showed you, in that the 4-ribbed cactus, its job is to absorb all the negativity that's around it and absorb that and release it through into the earth, letting it essentially transmute from negative to positive energy. So that's the way that the 4-ribbed cactus work. As I said, the 5 to the 12 can be used for medicine, for different purposes. For someone for their first time, you probably wouldn't give them a 12-ribbed cactus medicine. That would probably be a bit intense. You'd probably be wanting to give them maybe 6, 7, 8 ribs, somewhere in there, and then if they choose to keep coming back, then you would slowly give them medicine that was more ribs and more powerful. Now the 13-rib cactus, I'm not exactly sure what its purpose is. I know that it is highly revered and that a 13-ribbed cactus will never be cut down and will never be used for medicine. It will always just be left to grow. It is seen as an incredibly sacred cactus if it has 13 ribs, and it will just be left to grow and to... I really don't know what, to be honest. All I know is that it's revered very highly as a very sacred plant if it has the 13 ribs. The ways that the medicine is given can be quite interesting in that it traditionally would be boiled down into sort of a kind of sludgy mix that you would then drink. That's not pleasant at all, I have to say. It's probably the most traditional way of doing it, but it's really not pleasant. More and more nowadays, people are starting to use a powdered form of San Pedro, which is a lot easier to get down to drink, to get down into the body and to use. So slowly I see people moving away from the sort of sludgy cactus brew to using the powder mixed with a glass of water, and then you drink it. And then it can also be given dry, given a bit on the hand that you then lick and swallow. So they're the different ways that the medicine is sort of given. I think that's about all that I had kind of decided to speak about on San Pedro. I hope that it's given everybody a kind of idea on the different ceremonies that can be run, what the medicine itself is about, where the plants grow, where it comes from, and a little bit of history. If you've got any questions about things that I haven't covered, please contact me and I'll do my best to answer them. I may do another video on San Pedro if I feel that I have missed some really vital points. If not, I'll be working on putting together some more videos of things that people have either asked me to talk about or things that I've jotted down that I would like to talk about. So I will be releasing a few more videos over the next few days, few weeks, depending how I'm feeling. I'll slowly get around to releasing a few more. So thank you all for listening and watching. I look forward to releasing some more videos really soon. Thank you, and I hope you tune into the next ones. Cheers.